In 2024, the Commission of Inquiry took up quite a bit of space within the Virgin Islands. Right here at the House of Assembly, a number of key landmark legislations were passed in an effort to make the 48 recommendations outlined in the COI. Let's take a look at the COI in 2024. This year, the government of the Virgin Islands launched its Governance Transformation Education campaign to raise public awareness and understanding of the vast changes resulting from the Commission of Inquiry report. The changes are as a result of 9 major policies approved by Cabinet and 15 pieces of legislation passed in the House of Assembly this year, which implement the COI's recommendations. Premier and Minister of Finance, Dr. the Honorable Natayo D. Wheatley, stated, and I quote, "The COI was the most comprehensive and robust governance reform in the history of the Virgin Islands, and we embrace the opportunity to strengthen our systems of government and build our institutions to support its recommendations." Since completing passage of the last piece of legislation in September of 2024, the Premier and his team have worked collaboratively with the Governor and his team to get bills assented to, a process of due diligence involving the Attorney General Chambers, House of Assembly, Cabinet Office, and the Governor's Office. The GTE campaign is one part of a transition plan the Premier presented to Overseas Territories Minister Stephen Doughty MP during his 4 to 6 November 2024 visit to the Virgin Islands to make his on-the-ground assessment of the implementation of the COI recommendations. The plan also sets out how the government will transition from COI to ongoing governance reform and the actions, milestones, and timelines for implementation. Under the plan, government ministries take full ownership of mainstreaming policy and legislative changes in the day-to-day operation of the government, training public officers and educating the public. The plan also includes a monitoring and evaluation function to allow for adjustment to policies and legislation to make sure they remain relevant to these Virgin Islands. During the first quarter of 2025, the ongoing governance reform initiatives are expected to be integrated with the public sector transformation program focused on enhanced delivery of government services. During this campaign, the public can expect to learn about the changes being implemented, ways in which the government will deliver on those changes, the impacts of the changes on residents, how the change services can be accessed, and where to find the relevant information. Governance Reform Delivery Manager Mr. Kedrick Malone spoke on the progress made over the year in the COI reforms.
Well, the COI, as we all know, came about as a result of initiated by the United Kingdom government, which required a review of governance in the Virgin Islands. And over the past 2 years, we've been undergoing the process, which we are nearing completion. But over those 2 years, it's been a tremendous amount of work has been undertaken by the government. Public servants, ministers, and the entire legislature reviewing how we do business based on the recommendations of the COI. That entails conducting reviews of subjects, it entails developing policies, public consultations, getting policies approved by cabinet, more consultation, having policies converted to legislation, more consultation, and then having those legislation go through the assent process, which is where we are right now. So we, in a way, by choice or by chance, have had to rethink how we run a country, how we conduct public business, how we deliver services to the public. And in my personal view, the COI was a blessing in that it helped us to address a lot of issues that we needed to address. Some we were aware of, some we never thought about, but the bottom line is that a lot of work has been done, and it will transform the way the Virgin Islands as a country moves forward. To me, one of the most impactful was the Public Assistance Act, because that addresses the vulnerable persons in the community. It addresses strengthening the social fabric. It addresses one of the fundamental obligations government has, and that's to take care of the people of the Virgin Islands. It meant overhauling how money is passed from the government to persons in need. It means assessing who needs support, who needs assistance, and because a lot of our traditional way of helping people was done through their representative, it means creating institutions that will support that process. And that is a total shift in how we're used to running the territory. It means we have to now develop institutions that are responsive to people. It means that we have to now find a way to maintain that personal relationship that existed between representatives and the people, and doing that within an institution. I think you would have seen in the Premier's budget address, he spoke about district councils. That, to me, is a transformative step, because it means that you now have to move government closer to the people so that people can get the support that they need from government. And that's just one example of what came out of the COI. And, you know, for a long time, we've talked about the need for government to have sort of the village approach to government, where the community is supported. And things like district councils, which came out of the need to move social services through an institution, means that we now have an opportunity to create a more supportive structure between government and people.
Additionally, Mr. Malone spoke on the landmark legislations that passed this year.
Okay, so there were 48 recommendations that came out of the COI. Those recommendations were divided into different areas, dealing with integrity, dealing with statutory bodies, dealing with public assistance. So out of those 48 recommendations, we passed 9 major policies: the immigration policy, crown ban policy, and other policies. In addition to the 9 major policies, there were 15 pieces of legislation that were implemented through the House of Assembly. And over the past 6 months, you would have seen the House was busy, literally meeting every day into the night, getting those legislations through. First reading, allowing time for consultation, into second reading, going into committee stage. So those 15 pieces of legislation are the net of the recommendation, of the 48 recommendations. They're all contained in those various legislation, the 15 legislation, and the 9 major policies.
He also spoke on the plans in 2024 and what the public can expect as a result of the COI implementations.
I think the COI provided us an opportunity to address a lot of issues that we needed to address for the Virgin Islands to move forward. We have had, since we received ministerial government in 1967, when development of the territory was passed on to political leaders, we've done a lot. We've seen more growth in that period of time than countries have seen in twice the amount of time. And it was time to sort of pause and reflect on where we were, how we were running the country. A lot of the growth happened without any sort of reform of the systems. And we know that the governor is responsible for the public service, and governance is a responsibility of the United Kingdom. And we know that we grew economically and socially, but our systems didn't keep up with the growth. Our systems didn't keep up with the aspiration of the people of the Virgin Islands. So it may have been unfortunate how it happened, but all things work together for good. And I think a lot of good is going to come out. A lot of good has come out of the recommendations that were implemented, the policies and the legislation. The public may not fully appreciate that right now, but we are in the process now of developing the education to explain to the public what do these 9 policies mean to you in your daily lives? What do these 15 pieces of legislation mean to you in your daily lives? What does it mean that statutory bodies now work a different way? What does it mean that social assistance works a different way? What does it mean that our register of interest works a certain way? What does it mean that members of the House of Assembly now have an accountability mechanism? There's a lot to be explained that would not have been obvious even with the consultations and with the policies and the legislation. So we are embarking on an education program that will explain what these things mean. And I think once people see that, I think they'll have a different appreciation for what has been done. They'll have a clearer sense that we have actually positioned the Virgin Islands for more advanced constitution, because the issues and the responsibilities that come with more advanced constitution require stronger governance. So in a coincidental kind of way, we have completed governance reform just in time to have discussion about constitution. And you could not have planned that any better. So it means that we now can look to the future, look at the aspiration of Virgin Islanders, develop a system, have in place a system that can fulfill what we're trying to do as a country, where we want to go, so that future generations can see that during this time, which appeared to be a time of turmoil, was actually a time of opportunity, which we took to create a new platform for the Virgin Islands for the future.
Over the coming weeks, residents can expect to see and hear information on the various policy and legislative changes, and in the case of legislation, when they will be brought into force, a process that may require additional steps, such as creating regulatory to clarify the implementation of the laws assented to and how they will be implemented. Information will be available from every available communication source within the Virgin Islands. The GTE campaign has been carefully designed to deliver a comprehensive communications approach, recognizing the importance of reaching all demographics in real time. The GTE COI campaign will include live televised programs featuring government officials and interactive call-ins, community public meetings to foster direct engagement, social media outreach to connect with diverse audiences, and participation in local talk shows and door-to-door campaigns for personal interaction.
Well, the last official deadline was at the end of August, which was an extension from the end of May deadline. And the end of August, we had pretty much completed all of the recommendations. There were a couple of recommendations still in legislation. There were a couple of legislation that still had to go through the House to complete the 48 recommendation. It was at that time the Premier went to London. We had a meeting with the FCDO minister, and the discussion pretty much says, well, you know, you've completed, you're almost complete with the legislation implementation, but they also have to go through the assent process. So the Premier committed to working with the Governor to get them through the assent process. This began in September as legislation was approved. And then that took a bit of time, because when you start going through the assent process, you have to consider what were the recommendations, did the legislation meet the recommendation requirements, are there policy issues that were placed into the legislation, which was the discretion of the cabinet and the legislator to put additional matters in the legislation, because the COI couldn't define everything. You know, it was really a guide, and I think when the senior civil servants and the ministers started to implement, they realized that there's much more that needed to be done beyond the COI, and that explains why the dates were not hardcore dates, because when you open an issue like public assistance, you realize that, you know, the whole social protection system has to be rethought. You realize that there's a whole institutional development that has to go along with moving public assistance from distribution through representatives through the institution of social development. So these things took on a whole different meaning once you started them. So deadlines were only relative to what needs to be done. But we are now at the point where we have implemented, passed all of the legislation. The assents are pretty much completed. I think maybe just one or two bills are awaiting assent. Those related to integrity, which are sort of a bundle of legislation, because integrity for the House of Assembly, integrity for public servants, and integrity for civil servants all have to be considered together. So there are 4 bills that will be assented to together once the integrity checks are done. And then we would have completed all of the assents, which we anticipate, it's still with the Governor, should be very soon.
Mr. Malone also addressed the BVI government's commitment to meeting the deadlines of the Commission of Inquiry.
So the meetings are very important because ultimately it's the minister for the overseas territories that has to make the recommendation to the Foreign Secretary and up the line for the Order in Council to be lifted. So the minister for the overseas territories is a new minister. It's a new Labour government in place. And the minister, we met with him, the Premier met with him in London in September, which was his first meeting with the minister on the COI. So that was a bit of a learning process, certainly for the minister, understanding the breadth and depth of the COI recommendations. And out of that meeting, it was agreed that in addition to having the legislation passed, there was also a need to monitor the assent process. So the Premier agreed to work with the Governor to address the assent of the legislation.
Throughout 2024, the BVI government held meetings with the UK government, and Mr. Malone spoke on the importance and success of these meetings.
The meetings with the minister were very important. You had a new minister with a new Labour government, and we know that philosophically Labour has a different approach to working with the territories than the Conservative government does. So the minister meeting in September was important as an introduction, both to the COI and to the Premier and the minister. And then the visit in September was pivotal. I think that was a critical meeting. The minister came here, he met with civil society, he met with the permanent secretaries, met with the House of Assembly and the Speaker and the opposition, met with persons in financial services. So he got a feel for the British Virgin Islands and what we had done. And I think that made a huge difference. It's one thing to be advised by your civil servants, it's one thing to see for yourself. And I think judging by the meeting that we had last week in London, I think that made a significant difference in his perception and his understanding of the BVI, of the COI issues, and what went into all of the work for the past 2 years. So I think with that, now that we have a level understanding of each other, the minister and the Premier, I think we're in a good place to move the process along. And that's what has been agreed, which the minister stated when he was here, that there'll be a final review of the COI implementation. The BVI government will have a review itself. The public will have an opportunity to also feed into what their positions are, what their views are of what has happened over the past 2 years. And then the UK will have officials coming in to look at specific areas. Because, as I said, there were some areas that were quite in depth. And when you pass policies and legislation and you make changes, there's a need to examine the impact of that and whether it will address the original concerns that were raised. So that process, as was mentioned in the media, the Premier's press conference today, and when the minister was here, that will happen in the first quarter of 2025. We think that once that process is complete, then the issue of the Order in Council will be discussed, and then that decision made.
Attention Anegada residents! Attention Anegada residents! CCT is coming to you! That's right! CCT will be visiting Anegada every third Wednesday of the month. Need to pay your bill? Sign up for a new service? Or have a customer service concern? CCT has got you covered! No need to leave the island. CCT is here to make staying connected easier than ever. Mark your calendars for every third Wednesday starting October 16th and visit us for all your CCT service needs. For more information, call us at 444-4444 or follow us on any of our social media pages. See you soon, Anegada!
At Higher BVI, we're not just about business.
We're about empowering lives, and that is because we aspire to inspire. By choosing us, you're supporting a company that believes in equal opportunities, diversity, and community growth. Our mission goes beyond profit. It's about providing HR solutions, fostering talent, and leaving a positive impact. Join us in building a better future, a better BVI. Choose Higher BVI, where your support isn't just a transaction, it's a transformation. Together, we're changing lives in these beautiful Virgin Islands.
Rashford made it. Manchester United have come from behind to lead.
At home or on the go, watch CCT Live. Download our app and carry your favorite TV shows, news, or live sports anywhere you go. Visit cctbvi.com/live, select your package, and tune in.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for sticking with us. Coming out of our COI Year in Review, we take you to the trial of Andrew Fahie, which began in 2022 and finally culminated in 2024.
The trial and subsequent conviction of Andrew Fahie, the former Premier of the British Virgin Islands, has been one of the most significant legal sagas involving the British Virgin Islands in recent history. This case, marked by legal complexities and revelations that have rocked the community, has unfolded over the past 2 years, gripping the attention of local and international audiences alike. In 2022, Andrew Fahie was arrested at Miami International Airport in a dramatic operation orchestrated by the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. He was charged with multiple counts, including conspiracy to import cocaine, money laundering, and racketeering. His arrest stemmed from an elaborate sting operation involving an undercover DEA agent posing as a member of the Mexican Sinaloa cartel, known by the alias Roberto Quintero. This operation sought to expose the complicity of political and port officials in facilitating large-scale cocaine trafficking through the BVI. Central to the prosecution's case was the testimony of Olivine Maynard, the former managing director of the BVI Ports Authority. Arrested alongside Fahie, Maynard later entered into a plea agreement, admitting her role in the conspiracy and providing testimony in exchange for a more lenient sentence. Appearing in court in February 2024, she recounted a series of meetings with Fahie and Quintero, detailing how her and her son, Kadeem Maynard, coordinated with the DEA source to facilitate the passage of cocaine through the BVI. Maynard's testimony painted a vivid picture of the dealings, including her claiming to have witnessed Fahie accepting $20,000 in cash as a sign of commitment to the operation. This payment was part of a larger negotiation that included an elaborate plan for trial shipments and an agreed-upon profit share, with Fahie set to receive 12% of the proceeds. Maynard's accounts were supported by recordings and cooperating evidence, solidifying the prosecution's narrative. The trial, which commenced on January 29th in Miami, spanned 8 days. It ended on February 8th with a unanimous guilty verdict on all counts. However, the case took an unusual turn when 2 jurors later contacted the court to express doubts with their verdict. The move raised unprecedented questions about the integrity of the verdict post-discharge. Legal experts noted that unless there was evidence of external pressure or bias, a verdict could not typically be revisited after being formally recorded and the jury dismissed. U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams addressed the rare scenario with caution, ultimately subpoenaing the dissenting jurors. In March, only 1 juror appeared in court and affirmed the guilty verdict was indeed her decision, leading Judge Williams to uphold the original outcome. This resolution ensured that Fahie faced a potential minimum of 10 years, with the possibility of life imprisonment on the principal charge of conspiring to import cocaine. Following the trial, sentencing delays punctuated the legal proceedings. Fahie's sentencing was originally scheduled for April 29, 2024, but was postponed multiple times due to motions filed by his defense citing scheduling conflicts. His co-defendants, Olivine Maynard and Kadeem Maynard, faced their own legal reckonings. Kadeem received a 57-month sentence back in November 2023, while Olivine Maynard was sentenced to 9 years and 4 months in June 2024. Considering her cooperation, age, health concerns, and lack of prior criminal record. On August 5, 2024, Andrew Fahie was sentenced to 11 years in prison. His defense argued for leniency, emphasizing his prior contributions to society and framing his involvement as a lapse in judgment rather than a central role in the conspiracy. Despite these arguments, the court underscored Fahie's breach of public trust and leadership position in the scheme. The BVI government, in a statement following the verdict, reaffirmed its commitment to integrity and governance reforms to protect the territory's reputation. The trial underscored the challenges of combating corruption and maintaining international trust in governance. This case also spotlighted systematic vulnerabilities that allowed such schemes to emerge. The involvement of other high-ranking officials, including former Commissioner of Customs Wade Smith and former Deputy Chair of the BVI Ports Authority Roxanne Sylvester, further expanded the narrative of how entrenched and wide-reaching the scheme was. It revealed a scale of bribery and manipulation in port operations, providing an unsettling look at how power could be exploited for personal and financial gain. Fahie's legal battles did not end with his sentencing, however. By September 2024, he initiated the appeals process, citing financial difficulties that impeded his ability to hire an appeals attorney. This development marked the continuation of protracted legal struggles that could extend for many months, with court records suggesting that appeals could take up to 18 months to resolve. It is likely that Fahie's legal battles will remain in the headlines in the coming year. Jacka Wooding, 284 Media.